Thanks so much for listening to Wine Blast. If you're looking for presents, don't forget you can give the gift of a Wine Blast Plus subscription to the wine lover in your life.
Simply head to wineblast.co.uk and choose the gift option. It takes seconds to do, and you can even schedule the email with a personalised message to land in the lucky recipient's inbox on Christmas Day.
In doing so, you're supporting the show, as well as gifting early episode access, exclusive bonus content, access to our extensive archive, and, coming very soon, subscriber discounts. So head to wineblast.co.uk. You can even do it with a glass in hand. Hello, this is indeed Wine Blast with me, Peter Richards, and my wife and fellow master of wine, Susie Barry. Welcome to the party.
Yep, no need to adjust your sets. Even wine nerds get to rock out sometimes. These are the strains of the brilliant Bristol four-piece, Adult Leisure, performing live.
And boy, did they perform. Now, you might be wondering, quite reasonably, what this live performance is all about, especially on this podcast. Is it party season? Of course it is. It's always party season in the Wine Blast world. But that's not the whole story here. This was one of the buzziest, coolest, most fun wine tastings we've been to in a while, wasn't it?
Yep, it was a wine tasting, believe it or not. It was called All You Need Is Rhône. See what they've done there? It was held at the Vinyl Factory in London, a kind of subterranean whitewashed warehouse-style venue. Very cool. There were 18 tables, each dedicated to one Rhône Valley cru from Côte-Rôtie to Cairanne, with rock star winemakers pouring wines.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of the evening, this roomful of excited and suitably refreshed tasters was treated to a live gig by Adult Leisure.
A definitive proof that Rhône crus get you going, you know, in some style, if the dancing was anything to go by. I mean, not mine.
There's no style to that.
Excuse me? I can say that. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And there'd clearly been a fair bit of thought put into this theme too, because each Rhône cru had come up with a band to represent their vibe, as it were. So, you know, they had a Spotify playlist to match. So we had Hermitage and The Clash, Tavel and Pink Floyd, love that, and Crus and Led Zeppelin, OVS.
I quite like Rasto and Bowie. That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Also, Vacqueyras and Radiohead, a band you've just been to see live.
I am very lucky.
But no Motley Crue or Cutting Crew.
Oh, love that.
I think they missed a trick there.
They did.
Anyway, I think I might be in danger of going down a massive rabbit hole here. So let's park that for a moment and clarify what we're actually going to be doing in this episode and what we're going to be exploring, which is the wines of the Rhône Valley in France, and more specifically, the cru of the Rhône Valley, and that's CRUS, and we'll be explaining what that means shortly.
Yeah, explainers and scene setting coming up. Meantime, though, here's a taster of the action ahead from interviews we conducted in as quiet a space as we could find. Obviously, it wasn't super easy, but basically something that wasn't the mosh pit.
If people maybe are feeling a little bit skint, like so many people are at the moment, you know, not just in the UK, but everywhere, I would say, you know, look to the Crus of the Rhône, because you can find some really delicious, organic, terroir-driven wines made by family-owned estates for £20, £25, you know.
So yes, it's a very hard work, but we like this. So the future is good.
So there we heard from writer and Rhône expert Matt Walls, as well as winemaker Marie Perret. More from them, and indeed others, in due course. We should also say thank you to Côte du Rhône Cru for sponsoring this episode and giving us the chance to explore the wonderful world of the Rhône Cru, which produce some of our all-time favourite wines.
Oh, yeah.
So we will, of course, be making time to taste and recommend some of those as we go along too.
Mandatory tasting for this one. And we'll even be sharing some delectable food and wine pairing tips too. That's something else to look forward to. Now, as we launch ourselves headlong into this topic, we should clarify a few things as well as set the scene. Firstly, what do we mean when we talk about the wines of the Rhône? Well, the Rhône is a major European river that rises in the Alps and empties into the Mediterranean. We're concerned with its lower reaches here in southeast France, the part that runs roughly from Vienne to Avignon.
Wine is a historic part of the landscape here. The Romans were big fans, apparently, and it is quite a landscape, from the steep granite slopes of the northern Rhône to the warm rolling hills of the southern Rhône. And right there, I've mentioned what is a fundamental point about the Rhône wines. This is a game of two halves. One half is the northern Rhône, the other half is the southern Rhône.
Different landscapes, different climates, different soils, different grape varieties. And this is a really important distinction to make right from the outset. The same river runs through them. Apart from that, the northern and southern Rhône are really quite different. Here are Matt Walls and Marie Perret making this very point.
So the wines of the northern Rhône, for me, are more about purity, they're about perfume, and they have a certain lightness to them compared to the wines of the southern Rhône, which for me are more about warmth and generosity and richness. And for that reason, I think the two regions should really be considered separately.
So the Rhône is like big family between the northern Rhône and the southern Rhône. We are all together close to the Rhône Valley, but finally we have two different kind of production.
One big family. I like that. Nice and friendly. And a productive family too, because, factoid alert, the Rhône is France's second largest AOP vineyard after Bordeaux and the third largest AOP wine region by production volume after Bordeaux and Champagne, ahead of the Loire and Burgundy.
And one more, the southern Rhône is by far the biggest contributor to that production, accounting for more than 90% of the Rhone's overall output. So the north is small in volume, albeit important in historic and qualitative terms.
Yeah, so two quite different wine worlds. In terms of climate, the northern Rhône is more continental, a bit more marginal, hence needing to use the steep south-facing slopes of the hills that rise up from the Rhône River to harness every ounce of solar warmth to ripen the grape varieties it has properly, whereas the south is more Mediterranean, giving more generous, richer styles of wine.
Another good way of making this distinction is via the prism of grape varieties. Here's Matt Walls again on this very subject.
Well, in the north there's very few, so it's all about Syrah, the reds. And I love Syrah because it combines an aromatic side and a perfume side with, you know, that structured side, the tannin, the acidity, those things that make a real impact to you physically on your palate. So that's why I love Syrah. From the southern Rhône, there's this smorgasbord, dozens of grapes to choose from. So if I had to choose just maybe one white and one red, which I find quite exciting, I would say in white, I would encourage people to have a look at Clairette, if they don't know it. So it's not the most widely planted white grape, but it gives these wines, they have this kind of petal softness to them, but a freshness. They combine this softness and freshness, which I find really compelling. So they don't have a lot of acidity. They're quite broad, but that makes them very food friendly. So that's why I love Clairette. In red, I would say, it's got to be Grenache. You know, I mean, it's the most widely planted grape. It's the most emblematic red grape of the southern Rhône. But it just creates these wines which are just so fluid and so full and so warming and can be so complex as well.
Okay, so the Rhône is mainly a red wine region. 75% of the vineyard makes red wine, though that picture is evolving, as we'll discover.
Yeah.
And in terms of red wine varieties, as Matt says, the headliners are Syrah in the northern Rhône and Grenache in the southern Rhône. And those two varieties account for more than 90% of all Rhône plantings.
That's an astonishing figure, isn't it? Especially when you consider there's a fair bit of white plantings and a pretty big range of other red varieties, especially in the southern Rhône, like Cairanne or Voge. So, you know, I guess some of that Syrah and Grenache will make Rosé, though. Anyway, one other way to come at this is through the lens of soil. Here's Matt Walls again.
Okay, northern Rhône, mostly igneous rock, mostly granite, with a little bit of schist and a little bit of gneiss up in the Côte-Rôtie, apart from Crus Hermitage, which is alluvial soil. Southern Rhône, mostly sedimentary soil, a lot of clay limestone, sand, and also some alluvials, again, galets roulés, alluvial soils. What do they do that's different? Okay, so in the north, I would say that the effect on the wines of particularly the granite and the metamorphic rocks, which are the schist and the gneiss, is to give wines with a certain upright feel, an aerial feel, a perfume, and they kind of have a tightness and a kind of tucked-in feel that I really like. The sedimentary soils of the southern Rhône, particularly the clay soils, or marl soils, which is essentially clay limestone, they tend to give wines with more fullness and richness, and galets roulés, those big pebbles, they give wines with even more power and structure.
Just to clarify, galets roulés are these famous large rounded pudding stones or cobblestones that sit on top of the soils, typically in photogenic shots from famous Southern Rhône appellations like Châteauneuf-du-Pape.
Okay, so you mentioned Châteauneuf-du-Pape there, and Matt mentioned Côte-Rôtie. So now we're finally honing in on our focus in this episode, which is the cru of the Rhône. So what is a cru, C-R-U? What does it mean? And why is it of interest to us wine lovers? Here's Matt Walls again.
So the cru of the Rhône, so we have 8 in the north and 10 now in the south. So what we mean by the cru are the top appellations. So whether it be Hermitage, Côte-Rôtie, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Gigondas, Vacqueyras, whatever. So these are the cru. Why are they important? Because they're considered to be the best terroir. And therefore they're considered to be the places that make the best wine.
And within that cru context, obviously there are some that are better known and some that are lesser known.
Yeah.
If we're looking for some real value here in, let's say, both red and white, what would the cru be that you would highlight?
Value crus, I would say to look at l'Irac. It's on the west bank of the southern Rhône. They make red, white and rosé. There's quite a bit of sand there, and often when you grow wines on sand, they have a certain finesse to them. They have this kind of slightly tighter feel. They're not quite as broad and rich as wines grown on clay or alluvials. I think there's a lot of value to be found in l'Irac, particularly in the whites and the reds. I would say on the other bank, on the east bank of the southern Rhône, I would look at Cairanne. I think there's wines with a lot of finesse in Cairanne, both in white and red. Also, for value, I think I would consider Vinsobres, which is a wine that we don't often see very much in the UK, but it is one of the cru, and they make wines with a bit more freshness and tension. They're always red, and they're often a little bit more Syrah heavy. So they have a little bit more tannin and a little bit more tension and a little bit more intensity, which I quite like.
And a value shout in the Northern Rhône?
Value shout in the Northern Rhône, very tricky, because the wines of the Northern Rhône do tend to be more expensive. It's a much smaller area, they don't make very much, and we're talking about very difficult farming, which is very expensive to do because it's on slopes. However, I think you can still find some good value in Crozes Hermitage. In Saint-Joseph, I would say, for the quality, actually, the wines of Saint-Joseph are fabulous value. They're not cheap, but they're fabulous value. Saint-Péray, very little known white appellation, the most southerly appellation of the Northern Rhône. Again, some very good value white wines to be found there.
So not just a fantastic explainer about cru there, but also a pretty handy guide to seeking out great value right across the Rhône. He is good, Matt, isn't he?
He's the best. He's the best. So as Matt said, there are 18 cru in the Rhône currently. That's quite a lot to talk about even for us. So we won't be able to cover them all in this episode. Consider this an invitation to explore further for yourselves, with our job being to pique your interest. But one thing we should make clear from the outset is we're not going to be getting into Châteauneuf-du-Pape. We know it's a big name, but that's a whole different story for another time. And right now, we want to focus on the other cru.
Two other things we're not going to be discussing but are relevant in terms of the context here are the Côte du Rhône and Côte du Rhône Village appellations. These are the designations that sit below the cru, and they account for nearly 60% of the Rhone's AOP production. But if you flip that round, you get a sense of how the cru account for just the very top tranche of quality Rhone production.
And just to give the overview, the cru of the Northern Rhone are, heading north to south, Côte-Rôtie, Condrieu, Châteaubriand, Saint-Joseph, Hermitage, Crozes Hermitage, Cornas and Saint-Péray.
And the cru of the southern Rhône, heading roughly east to west: Vinsobres, Rasteau, Cairanne, Gigondas, Vacqueyras, Baume de Venise, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Tavel, Lirac, and the newest cru of them all, promoted in 2024, Laudun. And we'll put a map in the show notes.
Some pretty heavy hitters in the mix there. A truly star-studded lineup. Right, so now we've set the scene and got stuck into the cru, let's take a quick breath before we dive in even further. By way of brief recap so far, the Rhône Valley is a wine region in two parts. The north with its scented Syrah on granite slopes, and the south with its heady, rich Grenache on alluvial undulations. Of course, that broad generalisation doesn't capture all the many nuances of what is a fascinating wine region, and also the many ways in which it's evolving and adapting for the future.
Which is the really juicy part, and what we're going to get into now. We didn't really introduce Matt Walls properly at the top, but his book, Wines of the Rhône, is excellent. And more recently, he's published The Smart Traveller's Wine Guide to the Rhône Valley. He tastes huge amounts of Rhône wines every year. He even runs tours to the Rhône, and we'll put info on our show notes. Anyway, you asked Matt if there's a new wave of winemaking going on in the Rhône.
Is there a new wave? Yes, I suppose so. In the southern Rhône, I would say more than in the north. The southern Rhône, however, it's much, much bigger. The northern Rhône only makes 6% of the wine of the Rhône Valley, so there's much more going on in the south. And one appellation, actually, that I would like to pull out is Tavel. I mean, you know Tavel. So it's the only appellation that makes 100% rosé wine in the southern Rhône. And they have to be dark, right? By law, it's in their rule book. And if the rosés are too light, they have to be downgraded to Côte de Rhône. So it makes life quite difficult for them, because the trend, of course, is for very pale rosé. But their rosés they're quite powerful. They are quite deep. They're dark. They're very food friendly. Weirdly, they age quite well. And there has been this new wave of producers in Tavel making wines with just this amazing complexity and finesse, kind of going back to the old way that Tavel used to be made about 50, 60 years ago, maybe 70 years ago. Really led by this guy called Eric Pfifferling at Domaine Langlois. And he's taught loads of people his way of doing it, who are now going out and they're setting up their own domains. And it's creating this kind of revolution, a Tavelution, which is what I find really exciting that's going on in the southern Rhône today.
So we're talking rosé with character here, rosé with unashamed guts and gumption,
Yes.
something to say for itself, and not bland, boring.
That's it. It's rosé with character, with complexity, with depth, with a bit of tannin, like a red wine. Almost, it's not quite correct to even really refer to them as rosés. Not like the rosé that we see so often on the shelves today. It's more of this kind of like a pale red, almost, like a claret style, than a rosé. And so they work really well with food as well, because they have a bit of texture and a bit of tannin and a bit of oomph.
A Tavelution. Love that. But this is music to our ears. Rosé that goes beyond the bland and the boring and the identikit, and which majors on character and complexity and works really well with food. This is what we were talking about, wasn't it, in our We Need to Talk About Rosé episode.
Yeah, lighter smashable reds are really popular right now too.
Yeah.
And there's really not much between a dark rosé and a lighter red, is there?
Yeah.
It's intriguing that Tavel has to be a deep coloured rosé by law. But maybe they should market them as very light reds rather than deep rosés. And who knows, they'd probably suddenly be uber trendy.
Yeah, and we've got one here, haven't we? The Lunar Apogée Tavel 2023. It's a biodynamic blend of mainly Grenache with Cinsault, Claret and Syrah. It's got that very deep hue for a rosé, hasn't it? And it's packed full of ripe, rich black cherry and blackcurrant flavour. It's dry and full-bodied, but really well-balanced and great with food.
And yummy, whether it's a dark rosé or a super light red. Now, one of the other subjects that always comes up when you ask how the Rhône is evolving is the increasing popularity of white wines. François Miquel is general manager and winemaker for Ogier, a negotiant producer based in the southern Rhône. I asked him what's most exciting in the Rhône right now.
Rhône has a real opportunity by having a large diversity of appellation. We can produce white, rosé, red, fortified, sparkling, and I think the trend since a few years is more and more for white, and the Rhône is also changing. So we are moving for rosé and red to some more white, and so we have a great potential to continue to adapt ourselves.
You say that, but obviously the Rhône is known particularly for red wines. How can you adapt and produce more white? Because presumably, you're in quite a warm part. Certainly the southern Rhône is in a warm part of France. That would suggest it's more suited to reds than whites and will become increasingly more so. How are you going to produce whites with freshness and lovely, lively fruit and not too much alcohol?
So you're right that Rhône Valley is a sunny area, but Rhône Valley, we have a lot of different exposition, a lot of different altitude. You have limestone, we have gneiss, you have granite, and all of this soil helps to regulate the temperature, So finally, we can manage to adapt, but you need to plant the right grapes at the right place. It's easy to say, but not easy to do. So that's a lot of work to find the right terroir, the right exposition also. For years, we have been looking for southwest exposition because this was the way to get the more sun. Now we are more looking for some east, if not north exposure. So we have just to find the right place to plant the right grapes.
And would you say you will continue to major on Viognier, Marsanne, Roussin rather than moving to other varieties?
No, I think we need to also to move to the grape variety. So the Viognier will remain the king in some appellation like Condrieu, but I guess and I bet in the southern Rhône we'll go more for variety like Clairette. Clairette is very good. It's refreshing by itself. So I bet Clairette will be one of the variety for the future. Vermentino, which is very popular in Spain, in Italy, in Sardinia, in Corsica. Vermentino could be a good variety, and we are also testing, because with the global warming, each one region is testing some new variety. So we are testing since 5-10 years some variety coming from Greece, coming from South Spain, Portugal, like Albarino, for example, Asiatico from Greece. So maybe that will be the grapes of tomorrow. But I think the Rhône Valley is a paradise for blends. And we are an area for blend, especially for Southern Rhône. And so I'm sure we'll find some way to compensate the global warming because of the grapes, because of the terroir. It's a blend of grapes and a blend of terroir. This is important to keep that in mind. And I think we have good tools to adapt ourselves.
Asiatico and Albarino in the Rhône. You heard it here first. Actually, I think we've touched on this before in the pod, haven't we? But still, it's interesting to hear what might be coming further down the line. And yeah, global warming too, affecting everyone in the world of wine, but the Rhône is no exception, meaning producers are having to adapt.
And funnily enough, whites can also be a hedge against climate change because you can harvest them earlier than reds and not have to wait so long for flavour ripeness while potential alcohol levels are surging in the grapes and acidity is dropping. But yeah, it seems like whites are growing in popularity. You can, of course, make whites from red grapes, a Blanc de Noir style, but it does seem like producers are starting to think more long-term about replanting white varieties.
So just looking at the figures, 12% of the Rhône vineyard was white wine production in 2024, 12%. That's just behind rosé at 13%. But white does seem to be, as you say, growing in popularity. And François touched on some of the white grape varieties there. Viognier is the famous grape of Northern Rhône Cru like Condrieu, and it also can be used in the blend of Côte-Rôtie, of course. Marsanne and Roussanne are typical in the Northern Rhône, sometimes in the south too. Clairette is clearly on the up, mentioned by both Matt and François, so that's probably one to look out for. Incidentally, Grenache Blanc is the most planted white in the Rhône, and that's a cracking white variety. We're big fans of.
So let's bring in Marie Perret here to continue the white wine theme. Marie is the 29-year-old daughter of André Perret, whose eponymous Condrieu estate makes beautiful classical Condrieu and Saint-Joseph wines. Now, Condrieu is an intriguing cru. It's mainly planted to the finicky Viognier variety on steep slopes, so very hard work. And although the appellation was created in 1940, by the 1960s, the vineyard had shrunk to around 10 hectares, so it nearly disappeared.
But then a handful of committed growers, heroes really, André Perret included, kick-started a revival, because Viognier and Condrieu can make the most beautiful, distinctive white wines with a powerful perfume and mouth-coating, generous palate profile. But this took quite a bit of hard work, including building stone walls and terraces with vines higgledy-piggledy in the mix, as Marie explains.
The funny thing with Condrieu is that in the 1970, we had only maybe 10 hectares because the work was very hard and everybody go to work in the industry in the other part of the Rhône. So when my dad arrived and other winemaker from his age, they come back in the 80 or 70, 80, they were like crazy. They say, okay, we have to replant all this region because Viognier have his origin in Condrieu, in the Rhône, Northern Rhône. So they say, okay, we have to replant. And it's all this generation who decide to replant this appellation and to rebuild all the wall stone, to put this Viognier. So yes, it's a very hard work, but we like this. We like to have little terrace everywhere and to plant and to take care of the Viognier in our appellation.
So just to be clear, you like that
yeah,
hard work, because that's hard, making wine from these steep hillsides, degraded to granite soils. That's hard work, no?
Yeah, but we love this kind of hard work because, I don't know, to have a long line of vines, for us it's not funny. We like to have a little vines everywhere, and yeah, we love this kind of work. It's hard, but everything is doing by hand, so it's the nice thing.
And Condrieu is an interesting story because the appellation almost disappeared.
Yeah, exactly. Viognier is the origin of the Viognier is in Condrieu appellation. Condrieu, it's an old appellation, 1940. But finally, like I said, in the 1970, we had only 10 hectares. And it's all this generation of our parents who replant the vines. So now we have 221 hectares of Condrieu. And almost all the appellation is planted now.
What's Viognier like as a grape to grow and to make?
Viognier is not the easiest one because the quantity is not very high, and some year it can be high, but the other year is like no, we have no grape, and with the disease sometimes it's complicated. Yeah, Viognier, we need to take care of the Viognier during all the year. So it's not the easiest grape variety, but we love this work. And finally, the aromatic and the fineness of the Viognier, it's very good in Condrieu. Because sometimes Viognier can be opulent. And in Condrieu appellation, we always have the fine and fresh Viognier.
I was going to ask, what does Condrieu give to Viognier that makes those wines so special?
Sometimes people say, oh, Viognier, no, I don't really like Viognier because it's too much, it's too opulent. But when you came in Condrieu, I think the granite soil, because it's granite very decomposed, and we give at the Viognier all is aromatic, but we give him also the fineness and the freshness we need. So we have a very nice structure with the Viognier in Condrieu, but we have also this long wine with very fine and freshness. So it's good.
So Condrieu is a real back from the brink story, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And it is the heartland of Viognier, which is a grape variety that's quite widely planted around the world now. It makes very distinctive wines. Yeah. And we've got a couple of Condrieux here with us, haven't we?
We do, don't we? We've got the André Perret Sherry 2023, which is a really sort of classical style, isn't it? With sort of apricot kernel, white pepper aromatics, and a sort of pithy, peachy, spicy finish.
Yeah, and then a contrasting style is the Les Vins de Vienne Condrieu La Chambée 2023, which is more marked by oak barrel aging. So it has a creamy, honeyed apricot aroma and then a broad, opulent palate, but wonderfully focused too.
Yeah, really delicious. I think they both capture a bit of what Marie was saying about the way good Condrieu has a tension and balance, despite being a richer style of white. Marie did mention how with climate change they're leaving more leaves on the vines to shade the fruit, trying to focus on harvesting at exactly the right moment, not too early, not too late, which is key with Viognier. A lot of their work now is focused on retaining freshness in the wines.
Now, just south of Condrieu in the northern Rhône is the Cru of Saint-Joseph, where Guillaume Boissonnet works at Domaine Boissonnet. Guillaume is another younger generation who's joined a family domain, in his case from business school in Paris. I asked him to tell us what makes Saint-Joseph special.
So Saint-Joseph is a very long appellation. So from the north to the south you have 34 miles, but what makes it special is the terraced vineyards, steep vines, and the granitic soil, which is the main characteristic of the Saint-Joseph appellation. And it's most well known for its red. So Syrah is a big part of the Saint-Joseph identity. But we also produce white with Marsanne and Roussanne.
Tell us about Syrah as a grape variety and how it expresses itself in Saint-Joseph.
Yes, tough question.
Big question.
What I like about Syrah in the Saint-Joseph area is the freshness that it has, the spicy pepper aromatic, blackberry aromatic, which is kind of unique in Saint-Joseph. The fine tannins that you usually find in steep vines or terrace vines with south exposition is something that I really like, and the balance that you have, it's not that you have much more acidity compared to other southern part, but you have the freshness and the balance that is very interesting, I think.
How does the history of the region and its winemaking, how does that affect the way you make wine?
The history is mainly in the steep vines and in the terraced vineyards, and that's not something you can undo. It's here and you have to deal with it if you want to make Saint-Joseph. You have to work on the terraced vineyards. So that is part of history, and there is also the family history that you want to continue.
Now, sustainability is a big focus for a lot of winemakers these days. What are you doing on that kind of wider front with sustainability?
So sustainability, we try to find ways to lower our impact on the environment. So one of the, I think, hardest thing to do and the hardest work, it's for the work in the vines, because with all the spray and the tractors, it's a big thing. What we try to do is to reduce when it's possible, and with new way of working, something I'm really interested in is cover crop where it's possible, because it has many benefits. We have some problem with the erosion, with the soil erosion. So cover crop can be a part of the solution. Cover crop can also allows us to reduce the fertilizer. And for the biodiversity, is also a good point. We can think about maybe lower the weight of the bottle, which can have no impact on the quality of the wine, but can reduce our CO2 emission by a certain amount.
And have you done that then? Have you been trying to lower the weights?
Yes, we've done it 2 years ago because to export the wine, some country asked for lower weight bottles. And at first we were doing only for this country, which was not very smart. And I just asked myself, why shouldn't we do it for every other country and even for the French market? And so we've done it. And I don't know why we didn't do it before. For the production of the bottle, it's reduced by 50% the gas consumption.
So reducing the carbon footprint of the bottles by 50%, that's quite something.
That's amazing, isn't it?
And other producers could take a leaf out of their book, couldn't they? Heavy embossed bottles are probably not the best way forward these days.
And of course, focusing on sustainability is one way to help ensure the survival of the family domain and the continuation of this proud winemaking history in the region that he talks about. So it's good to hear that.
One other thing Guillaume mentioned was trying to convince his dad to introduce some new techniques. We all know how hard that can be, don't we? One of which was incorporating stems or whole bunches into the vinification of their Syrah. And it's interesting because exactly the same thing is happening with Grenache in the southern Rhône too.
Yeah, I mean, François Miquel of Voge mentioned this when I asked how Rhône winemakers are doing things differently to make their wines fresh.
The Grenache is a very juicy variety. It's round, velvety, easy drinking. What I see more and more, what we do more and more is a whole bunch vinification, a whole cluster. So we keep the stem. For me, this is an evolution of the past 10 years. 10 years before, almost nobody was making 100% whole bunch wine. And now more and more we keep the stem. So two advantages. The stem gets water in it. So if you take the same vineyard, this stem or whole bunch, the whole bunch will be almost 1% less in alcohol. So it's important. And in terms of profile, the stem brings maybe a kind of dilution, but a good dilution that makes the wine, easy drinking, that brings some what we call the floral note, the dry floral smell, so it's very appealing. When you smell it, you want to drink it. And also the whole bunch makes the wine really full on the mid palate, and the mid palate. So I guess the whole bunch vinification could be one thing. And also what I see that people do more and more is the co-fermentation. You can vinify several grapes together. I'm an enologist. I've been teach at school that Syrah is one vat, Macensot another one, and Grenache a third one. And now you can make compromise and to harvest some Syrah like a late maturity and to blend them with a early maturity Grenache, and you mix them from the alcoholic fermentation. And finally, the earlier you mix the grapes, what you call the co-fermentation, the more is, the integration, the finesse, and so these are little techniques that can be useful, to fine tune and to adapt the style to the new way of consuming red wines.
So we did talk about stems in our Going Gaga for Garnacha episode. It definitely seems a trend, and not just in Syrah or Grenache, but other varieties like Pinot Noir too, giving a bit more kind of tannin and freshness, extra aromatics, slightly lower alcohol. And then co-fermentation is an interesting one too. Yeah,
now we do have some more wines to taste and recommend, as well as some food matches to put out there.
Yes.
So how about we just choose a couple of different styles to recommend here and then put the rest on our website show notes?
Exactly, good idea. We don't have limitless time. So first up, we have some fizz in the spirit of different styles. François mentioned sparkling wine, and this one is the Alain Voge Saint-Péray Les Boules d'Alain. Love that name. 2020 Brut Nature. We all want a bit of Boule d'Alain. This is traditional method, 100% Marsanne, 4 years on the lees, and it's lovely, isn't it? It's quite rustic with bruised apple sort of of nutty honeyed aromas and a dry finish but it's sort of lovely sort of savoury, nutty, oxidative kick on the end. It's a bit different, isn't it? But it's really nice.
Yeah. Rhône Cru fizz to get the party started. There we go. Now, I've got a white from the Southern Rhône, which I adore. It is the Domaine La Monardière Gaillejade Vacqueyras 2023. And now it's a blend of Roussanne, Grenache Blanc and Claret Blanche. And it is just gorgeous. You've got really intense aromatics, very sunny kind of yellow fruit and red apple, and then a mealy, nutty sort of honeyed complexity. And then on the palate, it's broad, it's textured, it's spicy, seriously complex. So much energy and just tons of character. Really foodie. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Now, I've got a red from the Northern Rhône. This is the Yann Chave Crozes Hermitage Le Rouvre 2023. This is stunning.
It's very good, isn't it?
So good.
Very, very
good.
It
has a red fruited freshness and lift to it, but that classic syrup, peppery, savoury, meaty complexity. It's very long, it's very complex, very food friendly. It's just spot on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fun fact here, Crozes Hermitage produces more than half of the total production of the Northern Rhône Cru. It's by some distance the largest cru in the Northern Rhône.
Good fact, Mr. Richards. Moving on to the Southern Rhône, I've got the Domaine de Fenouillet Baume de Venise Terre Blanche 2023, a blend of Grenache, Syrah and Mourvèdre. And this is good because it has really lifted floral aromas together with hints of pepper and sous-bois. And the palate is generous and spicy, but also with a meaty, peppery complexity and lift.
Yeah, I think working for freshness and savoury complexity is the way forward in the Southern Rhône. You know, in an ever-warming world, richness and ripeness is a given. So whether it's through stems or co-fermentation or seeking out elevation or adapting grape variety selection, getting that balance right will be the key in the future.
So as we say, we don't have time to include all our recommendations from this epic tasting here. So we'll put more on our website show notes. Do check them out. In the meantime, we had some food and wine recommendations from our interviewees to share, didn't we?
We did. First up, Marie Perret and Condrieu.
My grandfather was a fruit and vegetable producer, and asparagus is very hard to share with wine, and Condrieu with asparagus is very nice.
Green asparagus with butter.
In our region, it's more white asparagus. Because we have the Seine close to the Rhône, and we have some asparagus, and the white asparagus with mayonnaise at the beginning and some Condrieu is very, very nice.
Love that. Here's another Northern Rhône white match from Guillaume Boissonnet.
For the pairing, I've got the best pairing for a white Saint-Joseph. White Saint-Joseph with risotto, with mushroom like penny bun or cep or maybe truffle is the perfect match for me for Saint-Joseph. The association of the cream and the acidity and the richness of the white Saint-Joseph is just perfect.
And finally, Matt Walls.
Ooh. So a really classic dish that I love is daube de bœuf provençal, which is basically a beef stew, isn't it? But a particularly delicious one with a lot of the local kind of gaïque herbs like rosemary, thyme. I would choose that with a bottle of Gigondas with maybe about 10 years of age to it. Something with a little bit of age just to bring out the complexity. And I think those two together would just be a very delicious combination.
It sounds delicious. Why Gigondas particularly?
Because I love Gigondas. I just love those wines. It's a really consistent appellation. It has a very different terroir. Like sometimes people kind of lump Châteauneuf and Gigondas and the Crus of the Rhône, like the Southern Rhône, all in the same pot. But if you look at the terroir, they are completely and utterly different. So Châteauneuf-du-Pape is quite kind of low, rolling, lots of galets roulés, kind of those big rolled pebbles and sand. Gigondas, mountainous, clay, marl soils. And okay, sure, a lot of the grape varieties are similar, but stylistically the wine's very different. And what I love with Gigondas is the way that it ages. For me, it really kind of hits a sweet spot at around between 10 and 15 years. And, the wines often, they're not that expensive. So, what I would encourage people to do is, buy 6, buy 12, drink one a year and just make sure they put it away for a little while, because then that's when it really shows its best, I think.
Top Rhône tips as ever from Mr. Walls. Now, one final thing we did ask was about the future of the Rhône Cru, and this was what Marie Perret said about Condrieu.
So now Condrieu, all the Condrieu is planted. So now we have a new generation from my age who just take the winery for their parents, most of it, and it's very nice because we know all each other, and we have a very nice group for Condrieu. So the future is good because I think almost everybody has the same idea of Condrieu, to keep this freshness and everything. So I think the future is good. We will have some issue with climate change and everything, but it's good to have a nice group of young people who just want to continue to increase the Condrieu appellation.
Good to hear the new generation is coming through, and I guess Marie is tangible proof of that. Guillaume too, in the Saint Joseph context. There were quite a few young faces among the winemakers pouring at the tasting, weren't there?
Yeah. Marie also mentioned quite a few young female winemakers coming through in Condrieu, which again is heartening to hear. Yeah. And this was what Matt Walls had to say about the future.
The future's looking pretty bright, I would say. I think the white wines are in the ascendant. Some of the rosés of Tavel, really exciting. Quality in the reds is really pretty consistent, and the value is good. So I think, if people maybe are feeling a little bit skint, like so many people are at the moment, not just in the UK, but everywhere, I would say, look to the Crus of the Rhône, because you can find some really delicious, organic, terroir-driven wines made by family-owned estates for £20, £25, And not just that, but if you can buy a few of them, they age really well as well, and they become more interesting over time.
They age really well and become more interesting over time, just like us. I wish. Anyway.
Not quite.
I won't ask your opinion of me in that regard. Talking of time passing, that's probably an appropriate note to end on. Would you like to wrap things up with a closing summary?
Delighted. So, the Rhône Valley is a proper playground for wine lovers, with emblematic reds varying from scented, savoury Northern Rhône Syrah to complex, hearty Southern Rhône Grenache and blends. But within the Rhone's top appellations, or cru, there's so much more going on, from fine white to serious rosé, even characterful fizz. The region is adapting to climate change and embracing sustainable practices, in the process becoming ever more diverse. They're even getting a bit rock and roll.
Yeah, thanks to Côte de Rhône Cru for sponsoring this episode. And thanks also to our interviewees, Marie Perret, Guillaume Boissonnet, François Miquel and Matt Walls. Finally, thanks to you for listening. Until next time, cheers. And we'll leave you in the fine company of adult leisure. Thank you for listening right to the end of the programme. You deserve some sort of medal, or maybe a glass of fine wine, whatever. Either way, if you're a regular Wine Blast listener, you'll know we do occasional sponsorships, both episodic and headline. You might not have thought of this, but if you're involved with a company, brand or region who could benefit from exposure to a top-notch global community of wine lovers, get in touch.
Wine Blast goes out to 200 countries and thousands of listeners. It's won multiple awards and is regularly one of the highest ranking drinks shows in global charts, with a knack of making national and international headlines, despite being a totally independent production made with a lot of passion and hard graft. If you'd like to support the show and take your message to an ever-growing global audience, get in touch by emailing contact@susieandpeter.com. That address is also on our website show notes, or you can find us on social media.